In the summer of 2019, a young couple named Matt and Elena bought their first house. It was a small fixer-upper in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, the kind of street where people wave from porches and kids still play in the street until the streetlights come on. The house was cheap for a reason. The previous owner had passed away inside natural causes, the realtor assured them. An elderly man named Harold Voss. No family, no next of kin. The house had sat empty for nearly 2 years before the bank finally listed it. Matt and Elena didn't care about the history. They were in their mid-20s, tired of renting a cramped studio apartment and desperate for something of their own. The inspection came back clean. The foundation was solid. The roof was only 5 years old. It was a steal. They signed the papers on a Friday and started moving in the next morning. The first few days were normal, exhausting, but normal. They painted the living room a soft gray. They ripped up the old carpet to reveal beautiful hardwood underneath. They made jokes about ghosts and laughed it off. Neither of them believed in that kind of thing. It was on the third day that Matt found the lockbox. He was under the kitchen sink, replacing a leaky pipe. The cabinet was dark and smelled like mildew and old wood. He had to contort his body just to reach the wrench back into the corner. That's when his knuckles hit metal, not soft copper, not rusted iron. Something solid, something that didn't belong. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. Wedged between the back wall of the cabinet and the plumbing was a small gray lockbox, about the size of a hardcover book. It was bolted to the wood, 4 heavy screws, each one rusted into place. The lock on the front was old, but intact. A combination lock, 5 digits. "Hey, Elena," he called out. "Come look at this." She came over, wiping paint off her hands with a rag. He showed her the box. She knelt down beside him and ran her fingers over the cold metal. "What do you think is inside?" she asked. "Money, jewelry. Old guy probably forgot about it." "Or something gross," she said, making a face. "It's been under a sink for years." They spent the next hour trying to open it. They tried prying it with a screwdriver. They tried hitting the lock with a hammer. Nothing worked. The box was cheap, but stubborn. Eventually, Matt grabbed an angle grinder from his toolbox and cut through the hinges. The box fell open. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry, no gold coins or family heirlooms. There was a notebook, spiral-bound, the kind you'd buy at a dollar store. The cover was stained brown in spots that Matt didn't want to identify. And on the first page, written in neat, cramped handwriting, were 3 words: "They always come." Matt laughed nervously. Elena didn't. He flipped to the next page. It was a list: names, dates, and addresses. June 3rd, 1987, the Henderson family, 142 Maple Street, 3 visits before they left. November 19th, 1988, the Kravitz woman, 889 Cedar Avenue. She lasted 2 months. April 4th, 1991, the Parkers, 456 Elm Drive. They never even unpacked. The list went on, page after page, dozens of names, dozens of dates, dozens of addresses, all on the same street as the house they'd just bought. And at the bottom of each entry, a small check mark or a single word: gone. The last entry before the notebook went blank was dated nearly 2 years ago. July 12th, 2017. The new owners are here. A young couple. She's pregnant. They look happy. Below that, written in different ink, darker, fresher, was a final sentence. They didn't stay happy. Matt closed the notebook. He looked at Elena. She was pale. Her hands were trembling. "It's just some crazy old man's diary," Matt said. "He was lonely. Probably had dementia." Then why did he bolt it under the sink? Matt didn't have an answer for that. They almost left it alone. Almost. But that night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the list, about the addresses, about the phrase, 3 visits before they left. So she did something she probably shouldn't have. She went online and started searching. One by one, she looked up the names from the notebook: public records, property transfers, old news articles. The Hendersons on Maple Street. Their house sold at a massive loss 6 months after they bought it. The wife filed for divorce the same week. The Kravitz woman on Cedar. She was found wandering on the highway at 3 a.m. barefoot, unable to remember her own name. She was institutionalized. The Parkers on Elm. They moved out in the middle of the night, left all their furniture, all their clothes. The neighbors said they heard screaming coming from the house every night for 2 weeks straight. But when the police showed up, the Parkers said everything was fine. They just smiled and said everything was fine. Elena stayed up until 4 a.m. reading, and the more she read, the more she noticed a pattern. Every single house on that list was within 4 blocks of their own. Every single family had moved in full of hope, and every single family had fallen apart within a year. Divorce, disappearance, madness, sometimes worse. But there was one entry that made her blood run cold, an address she recognized immediately, because it was their address, their house, and next to it, in that same cramped handwriting, was a list of previous owners, going all the way back to 1987. The Voss name wasn't on it. Harold Voss wasn't listed as an owner. He was listed as the watcher. Elena woke Matt up at 5 a.m. She showed him everything. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he closed the laptop and said, "We should return the notebook. Put it back in the box. Pretend we never found it." "You don't believe any of this, do you?" Elena asked. "I believe that old man was probably sick, and I believe we just bought a house we can't afford to walk away from." So they put the notebook back in the lockbox. They bolted it back under the sink. They painted the kitchen. They hung curtains. They tried to move on with their lives. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Then the little things started. Elena would come home from work and find all the cabinet doors open, every single one. She'd close them, and the next morning, they'd be open again. Matt thought she was forgetting. She thought he was playing a prank. Neither of them was. Then the lights started flickering, not the whole house, just one room at a time, like something was walking through the halls, flipping switches as it passed. Then the footsteps, soft at first, almost imperceptible. But at night, when the house was quiet, Matt swore he could hear someone walking in the attic. Slow, deliberate steps, back and forth, back and forth. He checked the attic 3 times. Nothing, no footprints in the dust, no disturbed insulation, just silence and cold air. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Elena was home alone. Matt was working late. She was sitting on the couch, watching TV, when she heard a noise from the kitchen. Not a creak, not a rattle. A voice, low, male, humming, the same minor key tune over and over. She grabbed her phone and crept toward the kitchen. The humming stopped. She turned on the light. Nothing. Empty counter, closed fridge, silent sink. But the cabinet under the sink was open, and the lockbox was sitting on the floor. The notebook was gone. She called Matt. He didn't answer. She called him again. Voicemail. She was about to leave when her phone buzzed with a text message. It wasn't from Matt. It was from an unknown number. The message was 3 words. "Check the bedroom." She ran upstairs. Their bedroom door was closed. She knew she had left it open. She pushed it open slowly. On the bed, laid out like a museum display, was the notebook, open to the final page, and below the last entry. They didn't stay happy. Someone had added a new line in fresh ink. Still wet. July 30th, 2019. The new couple. She cries in the shower so he won't hear. He drinks alone in the garage. They haven't touched each other in 2 weeks. 3 more visits, and they'll be ready. Elena screamed. She ran out of the house and sat on the front lawn until Matt got home an hour later. When she showed him the notebook, he didn't say anything. He just walked back inside, packed a suitcase, and loaded it into the car. "We're leaving," he said. "We can't afford to," she said. "I don't care." They slept in a motel that night. The next morning, they called the realtor and demanded to cancel the sale. The realtor laughed. She said there was no evidence of anything wrong with the house. She said they'd lose their down payment. She said they'd be blacklisted from every bank in the state. Matt hung up. He looked at Elena. She was already searching for apartments online. They never went back to the house, not for their furniture, not for their clothes, not for anything. They walked away from everything they owned and moved into a tiny studio apartment on the other side of the city. They told themselves it was over. But last week, Matt got a letter, no return address, postmarked from their old zip code. Inside was a single page torn from a spiral notebook. On it, written in that same cramped handwriting, were 2 sentences. "It's okay. I've watched you at the motel. I've watched you at the new apartment. You didn't really think a few miles would stop me, did you?" 3 visits left. Matt showed Elena. She didn't scream this time. She didn't cry. She just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, and whispered something Matt will never forget. He was never the one watching, was he? Matt looked at the letter again, and for the first time, he noticed something he'd missed before. The handwriting wasn't Harold Voss's. The notebook had been written in an old man's shaky cursive, but the new entries, the ones about them, were written in a different hand, neater, younger, and signed at the bottom with a single initial, H. Not Harold, her, the realtor who sold them the house, the one who told them it was a steal, the one who laughed when they begged to cancel. She lived 2 blocks away. She had for 30 years. She was the one who showed the house to every family on that list. She was the one who smiled and said everything was fine. She was the one who watched, and she was the one who kept the notebook under her own sink, not Harold Voss's, because Harold Voss never existed. The name on the deed was fake. The death was faked. The whole thing was a setup, repeated over and over for 3 decades. The lockbox wasn't hidden by a previous owner. It was placed there by the realtor before every single showing, a test, to see who would look, to see who would ask questions, to see who would try to leave. Matt and Elena looked, and now they have 2 visits left. The last line of the letter said something else, something Matt only noticed after reading it a dozen times. Don't bother running. I already have your new address. I sold it to you, remember? They never bought the studio. They rented it from her.